Hello, welcome to Movement Not Miracles. I'm Anna from Eat, Move, Be Happy, and this morning I'm going to be concentrating on hips. Everything hips, wake those hips up. Movement Not Miracles, oh hello Martha, is all about a bite-sized session to give you ideas on how you can look after your joints, keep them mobile, keep them healthy, keep them moving, and stretch some of those muscles that might get a bit tight, look after your posture, and generally ward off some of those aches and pains that we can get from sitting still for too long and not necessarily looking after our posture. I'm just checking if Martha wants to go out. I might put her out before we properly start so that we don't get interrupted. Go on, Moggin. There you go. It wouldn't be the same without Martha, would it? Right, so this session is, I'm going to do this mainly floor-based. You can do some of these seated, but if you are seated and find it difficult to get or can't get to the floor, then maybe check out one of the other Movement Not Miracles videos in our archive on www.eatmovebehappy.com for some seated variations. So to start off with, just a nice simple one. You can do this standing and you can do this seated. So we're just, in fact, I will do the first one seated because it's going to help me work through my back as well. So sitting on the bones of your bottom, sitting up nice and tall. So we don't want to be, I'll show you here, sitting on the fleshy part of your bum and sort of leaning back. This is a typical position for how we sit. We sort of relax into your hips and slouch down. Whereas actually, if we sat on the bones of our bottom and think of lifting up out of your pelvis and elongating through the spine with your shoulders back and down, that is a much better postural position to look after your back and therefore everything else that attaches to it. So we're going to be sitting up nice and tall. So for straight away, you're using your tummy muscles to support that frame, and you'll be using the muscles in your back to keep your shoulder blades back and down. So staying sitting tall, just lift one knee up towards your chest. So you can hold on your thigh if you have knees that are a little bit sensitive, but basically pulling that foot off the floor and pulling the knee in close to the chest, staying sitting nice and tall. So typically our hips do not move in this way because we sit like this all day. So that's one leg. Let's do the other one. So think of bringing your chest towards your knee and your knee up towards your chest. So you're not leaning forwards, but you're definitely not leaning away either. So bring your chest up and that straight leg. Work on pushing that leg into the floor. Toes up towards the ceiling. You can't see it on there, can you? I'll move back because we're going to do it the second time. So if I move back a little bit, you might be able to see. I'm not sitting against the wall, I promise. So second time is always better. Sitting up tall. And this left leg for me, nice and straight, toes pointing towards the ceiling, working through my quads to push that to the floor. And then I'll swap over. Exactly the same on this side. Okay. Then we're going to do a side bend, but a side bend with a slight difference because we're going to cross one leg over the other. So whilst we're getting some movement through our spine, crossing that leg over is also going to engage your muscles in the front of your hip flexors. So we're going to stretch through those as well. So crossing one leg over the other, you might want that foot a little bit away So a bit of a gap between your feet just for balance, because it is a bit of a wobbly one, so use a wall if you need to. Again, standing nice and tall, and for me now, what wants to happen is my lower back wants to stick out. So if I show you from the side, what wants to happen is my bum wants to stick out like that. So I can feel that in my lumbar, and that's not a good position to be in. So what we're aiming to do is really bring those hips forwards. So I'm working through my glutes to push that hip forwards. So that in itself is quite hard work. So as with most of this work, most of these exercises or these stretches, it's not just a case of going through the motions. Here I'm just standing, I'm not working through anything, but I'm not standing in a very stable position and my posture is not good. But the minute I start to pay attention, 1, I'm taller, 2, I haven't got that ache in my lower back or my upper back, and straight away I can feel my muscles working to support that position, which is good. So in this position now, I've got my left leg over my right. I'm just going to bend towards the floor on both sides. And you're not going to get as much of a bend as you would in a normal side bend, but you should feel more of the work in your hips now. I can feel this stretch here and over here, which is what we're aiming for. It's a nice subtle stretch, but we're building up to something bigger. So swap feet, get yourself set up, hips forward. So now my right leg is over my left and there's more of a stretch through my left hip flexors, working hard through that left glute to push that hip forwards, and then stretching away down to the right to start with, and then to the left. Don't forget to keep breathing. The hip flexors are the muscles that lift your legs up to your abdomen. So when you're seated, they get very short. They're in that position, so they do that action. And when you're sitting for a long periods, then they get short. And if these get tight, if you can imagine, these get tight at the front of your hips, then they're going to restrict the movement of your hip joint, which can end up with problems in your lower back and into your knees, apart from your hips. So stretching through your hip flexors is a really good idea. So we're now going to do a kneeling stretch. We're going to do the easier one, the less intense stretch to start off with. So kneeling down, 1 foot, a nice big stride out in front. If it helps, kneel on, fold up a towel, something quite solid but cushiony, if that makes sense. So you don't want something so soft and you don't want something wobbly, but something to kneel on if your knees are a bit, would prefer a softer floor. I'm actually using my yoga blocks to balance my camera, so I can't kneel on something today, but that's okay. So again, the same sort of setup here. So we want hips facing forwards and that pelvis tilted in, so we don't want this to be happening. So tilt your pelvis in, so you're having to work through that glute for that to happen, and your core should be working. And I've got a nice stretch here already down that front of that hip. And then I'm going to move my whole body forwards, so we're not bending at the hips. You're keeping everything in a straight line and just leaning into that front leg a little to increase the stretch there. And we'll just hold that for a few breaths. Keeping working to keep that hip coming forwards. Okay, let's swap sides, bit of a wobble there, the leg forwards. So again, setup is important. So pelvis tilted forwards, nice and tall, shoulders back and down. So my weight is through that knee, but also through that foot in front, tilting, really driving my hips forward, but without letting this happen. So think of pushing that hip towards the wall in front of you, and then just moving forward slightly to increase the stretch. And when you move forwards, don't let that hip drop back. Okay. So, next one. Exactly the same action. We haven't done this one for a while actually. It's a much deeper stretch, and the closer your knee is to the wall, then the more intense the stretch. So if your hip flexors are particularly tight, maybe do that first one again and build up to this one. So what we're aiming for here, can't remember which leg I've just done, I've just stretched that one, haven't I? So I need to stretch this one now, is to balance your foot so that your leg is bent. Now, if you're using the wall like I am, get yourself into this position and then you move your body up gradually, because it is a much deeper stretch in this hip. And when you get your body upright, then we're working to bring those hips forward, just exactly as we did in that last one. And if you're anything like me, my quads, muscles in the front of my thigh, are tight. So at the moment, I'm feeling a quad stretch and it's not yet relaxed enough to get into my hip flexor. So I'm not yet stretching here because my quads are really tight and they're just relaxing a little now. So it's useful to relax through the rest of your body so that this muscle can also start to relax. But that's one of the reasons that we hold stretches for an amount of time, to let the muscle relax into it. And it's also one of the reasons that we come back and do it again. And why we've built this up. So what we'll do this on the other side, and then we'll come back and do it a second time, and you might find you get a little bit more of a stretch in your hip flexors the second time round. You can also move that knee a little bit further away from the wall. So the closer to the wall, the more intense the stretch, so obviously the further away. Then it will relax it off a little bit. So, step forward, and then lift yourselves up. So I'm now stretching through my left side, which is equally, if not a little tighter. And you can't see from the side, but I'm not upright yet because my leg will not let that happen. So I'm just going to relax and breathe into this. I'm trying to drive that hip forwards. Now you shouldn't feel any pain in any joints. This is where kneeling on something that is supporting that knee helps. You're going to feel the stretch in your muscles, but it should not be pain in the joint. Okay, now I'm going to show you a different version for the second time, but it stretches in exactly the same way, and this is one that you can do if you're not able to kneel, and if you are able to lay on a flat surface, you can still do this one. So let me see, how am I going to show this leg first? Let's lie on this side. You might lose my head, but that doesn't matter. So if you lay on one side so that you are supported, and you see my elbow is supported like this, and you're all in a straight line, so hips, shoulders, head. My head's just relaxing in my hand. And then if you get hold of the top of your foot, and you're going to pull that knee back and push that hip forward. You can't really see because I'm wearing black. It's not ideal, is it? So I'm pulling that foot in towards my bottom and pushing that hip forwards. It's not as intense a stretch as using the wall, but it is stretching in the same place. I'm going to show you from a different angle on this side. See if you can see it differently. So lying on your side, bottom leg slightly bent, and then you can see pushing that hip forwards and pulling my heel in towards my bottom of the leg that's being stretched. There we go. So it isn't quite as intense as using the wall, but it might be a nice build-up, and it's certainly a good alternative if you find it difficult kneeling on the floor. Because if your knees are a bit sensitive, then that can be problematic. And then final one, we have done these before. I'll move my wrap round a little bit. So we're going to stretch through the inside of our thighs. So kneeling down on one leg, heel in line with the front of the knee. Let's move over a little bit. So, and then again, we're moving to push those hips forward. So you should feel a little bit of a stretch down. You should be working through your glutes, and this knee should be back. And then moving the whole of the hips, you're going to feel a nice stretch. You're aiming to push that knee over your toe. You shouldn't get there, but you're pushing with this side and holding that knee back. And when you get as far as you can go, think of driving this hip, sorry, not you, the other hip down towards the floor. So you've got a stretch here, and you're going to get a subtle stretch through this hip here. Keeping your body upright. And breathe into that. I can feel don't lean on your knees. I wasn't properly leaning, but I was taking some weight there. Okay, we're going to swap over. So, come over to this side of the camera. Heel in line with the knee. And so this is a sort of lazy position. And then I'm going to tilt my pelvis forwards, move that knee back, working through this glute. And move knee over my toe. Body is upright. And then when I get as far as I can go, think of driving that hip down towards the floor. And breathe. Don't forget to breathe. Still really important. So you should feel this work in your glutes as well as a stretch. And as the stretch eases off, see if you can move a little bit further. Okay, nicely done. And then it's always good just to do a bit of a cross-leg sit for your hips. It helps get some external rotation. That we don't sit like this very often, and so our hips don't tend to move through their full range of movement. So just sitting cross-legged on occasion is, well, more than on occasion, sitting cross-legged regularly is quite good for our hips. So just to finish off, hopefully your hips will feel a little bit more movement, a little bit stretched, a little less stiff, and obviously don't forget the rest of your body, but these are a little bit more difficult to do when you're making a cup of tea. But certainly hugging your knee towards your chest, standing nice and tall, that's doable. So check out the other Movement Not Miracles sessions for different variations. I do different things each day. Obviously we repeat some stuff because there's only so many things that we can do, but doing something is better than doing nothing. And doing some stretches and mobility work regularly is really good for your posture and really good to keep your joints healthy. So have a little look at some of the past videos and see what you can do. Also check out the website www.eatmovebehappy.com for online coaching ideas to help you with your health and well-being. And if you know of anybody who might benefit from a little bit of extra coaching support at the moment in this grey, grim weather as COVID continues, then please do point them in our direction. Enjoy your weekend. I will be back on Tuesday. Keep moving in the meantime, and don't forget, get moving at 11 on the Get Moving Facebook group. And don't forget, chat with us later today. So every Thursday, 4 o'clock, we run a chat with us session for Eat, Move, Be Happy people. If you would like to join in, then come with a question, come with to listen. All things health and well-being, a really friendly bunch of people, and it's just nice to say hello and find out what's been going on in everybody's week. So 4 o'clock on Facebook Messenger Rooms. So if you check out the link and join us there. Have fun. I will, if I don't see you later, I will see you next week. Thank you.